Having grown up in a family that's a food-oriented family, I mean, honestly, we lived for food. We talked about food. We were eating food, and we were talking about what we were going to eat the next day. That's the way we are. Having grown up in a farming community, growing up in northern Indiana, I was surrounded by cornfields and wheat fields, and my mom and I would go up and pick blackberries or strawberries or whatever. We were constantly out doing something with food. When my dad was working for Ponderosa, he had a plant in Goshen, Indiana, and my great-grandfather was a butcher and had a butcher shop up in York, Pennsylvania. Apparently all of my grandmothers were very, very, very good cooks and were known for their good cooking. And my mother was a very, very good cook. I wanted to be a restaurant manager. That's what I went to college for, not to be a chef. I thought I wanted to be the operator. I listened to my dad talking about the food business every night at dinner at 5:30. And we also learned table manners. We learned about the table. We learned about the food. My parents paid for me to go to college, to a small private school, and I did not feel good about the way that I was handling myself, so I went back at the beginning of my second year, and about halfway through that first quarter, I knew I shouldn't be there. I called my father, and they were living in Charleston, South Carolina. My dad and I had a very emotional conversation on the phone. My father wanted all of his children to have the opportunity to go to college, an opportunity he didn't have. He had a discussion with my mother, and he called me right back, and he said, there are a lot of good restaurants in Charleston. Why don't you come home, live with us, and let's see if this is really what you want to do. Well, I ended up getting an apprenticeship in a restaurant that was opening in the Planters Inn on the corner of Market and Meeting Street. I interviewed, and why I interviewed for a kitchen position, I don't know, but it's what happened. And because of that experience, honestly, the moment I stepped in that kitchen, worked with those talented people, I realized there was nothing else I wanted to do in my life but to cook. I worked 16 hours a day. I waited tables in the daytime, and I cooked at night. And I saved every penny, and I backpacked through Europe for 2 months, and when I came home, I was accepted to the Culinary Institute of America. I started off in fine dining, cooking, and I was lucky to do so. And then I made the effort to work for a company that was extremely successful in DC that had 18 very, very successful restaurants. And I worked for them with one intention, which was to learn how they operated their restaurants. I wanted to make sure I could be the best business person I could, to understand everything about the business of running a restaurant, as well as make the absolute best food I could. When I was in Washington, I met Tony Foreman opening Georgia Brown. And Tony grew up in Baltimore, and when he asked me to marry him, we were trying to decide where we wanted to start our life. We wanted to open our own restaurant. And so I was familiar with Baltimore. I did not know I was making a lifetime decision at the time, but I'm glad that we did. And we put a business plan together. We had the wine list, the menu, and a concept. 2 years later, Tony and I sat down with Doug Becker and asked him if he would be our investor. They were building the building that we're in now in Harbor East, and he said, there's corporate offices are going to be in that building, and they have spaces down with waterfront view that are for lease. Why don't you go over there and look? So Tony and I did, and we brought Charleston to that space. I think any fear you might have in the restaurant business is a failure, because as we all know, there's a huge failure rate in the restaurant business. I have worked very hard to learn as much as I possibly can so that I would not fail. And I think when you work from the heart and every bit of your heart is in your work, it's hard not for people to like your work, because I believe as a chef that it is all about the center of plate item. It is not about me. It is not about my ego. It is all about the guest. I want to do everything I can to make that thing taste the best way it can without overpowering it, overwhelming it, but yet giving it interest. So I always say when I hire a cook, it's all about peace and harmony on the plate. And that's why my food is as good as it is. A visionary is someone that thinks a little bit differently from everyone else and has an open mind. One of the other things about being in this business is that it is ever changing, and you have to evolve without giving up what your priorities are as both a business person and as an artist. In order to be good at what you do and do well in this business, you have to be dedicated to it. And I've been doing this now for 41 years. Charleston has been open, we're about to head into our 29th year. If there's a legacy, it is that I might be proud of is that, I taught a cook, and that cook became a chef, and that chef became a restaurant owner. That's amazing to me, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to own my own restaurant since I was a kid, so I couldn't ask for anything better. And my greatest achievement, the day my father walked into the restaurant, and he walked up to the kitchen line and saw me with a butcher knife in my hand and said, "I'm so proud of you. You own your own restaurant. You did this on your own, kid. You did this on your own." That's my greatest achievement.